Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jerry, and today we have part 3 of the free agent grades. Been doing good so far. First video got a lot of views. Second one, not so much. I am putting a lot of the bigger free agent signings in the thumbnail. So if you see somebody that you like in there, make sure to click on the video. I'm also doing them in chronological order. So, it's by time. So basically, if you see one that you like, click on it, and obviously welcome to skip through the video if you're looking for a specific grade. I will talk about every single grade that I give. So like, comment, subscribe, and let's get right into it with the first one. Leaving from where we left off, Tyler Biadasz. I mentioned that I'm a big fan of Tyler Biadasz. Being a Wisconsin fan, I love what I saw of him, and I think this is a perfect signing for the Commanders. Likely drafting a quarterback, or at the very least going to have a younger quarterback if they end up going with Sam Howell for some reason. I don't see that happening. But Tyler Biadasz actually calls his own protections. So that kind of leaves that out of the quarterback's hands, or at the very least helps the quarterback a lot. So if you have a young quarterback coming in there, he's going to do a great job filling in that role. It's a 3-year contract, so that's going to be for the entirety of the quarterback's rookie contract. Not the entirety, but 3 years of it. And enough to where you can have a later contract, at the end of it, if you really like him. Only $10 million a year is very low, in my opinion. I really like Tyler Biadasz. I think he does a really good job. I think the only speculation that you could have, or the only problem you could have with him, is maybe the strong offensive line that surrounds the rest of Dallas. But this is another Cowboy going to the Commanders, going over there with Dan Quinn, and there's a lot of them, even a couple more. I think there's even one more in this video. So a lot of them throughout of all free agency of Commanders from the Cowboys. But it works. The new coach is familiar with the players. Like I said, I think this is a great deal at $10 million a year for a guy that's going to be helping your likely rookie quarterback coming in. So I give them an A- for Tyler Biadasz. Colby Parkinson was on the edge of not even putting him in the video. He's going to the Rams. I think $7.5 million is fine. In my last video, I talked a lot about how I thought that there were some overpays, and it seems like most of them end up seeming like overpays. I think it is because the salary cap's up. So I did factor that in a little bit more here, and I think that with it being a 3-year, $7.5 million, I don't know. It seems a little much for me still for him. Not really he hasn't made anything for himself, so it's a fairly long contract. Being a 3-year and then $7.5 million seems like a little much, especially with some of the other tight end contracts that got out. So like I said, pretty average, but I think it was a little too much money. So he gets a C- to the Rams. Sean Murphy-Bunting. The signing alone is probably like a C+ for me. I don't really think very highly of Sean Murphy-Bunting, but the Cardinals literally don't have a bona fide one cornerback yet. You've got, Murphy-Bunting's probably a 2, and they are very, very needy at the position. So I put it at a B, mainly for the price. I think $5.8 million is a pretty good deal. 3 years, I think, is fair. And Sean Murphy-Bunting's still a good player. He's just not that number one. I think it's just what you're getting for the price is worth a B, and maybe even like just a B-. But then this being the biggest need for the Cardinals, I think it is pretty good value. So I give him a B. Finally getting a notable name in the secondary, or in the cornerback room at the very least. Jon Runyan to the Giants. Really like this one. Talked about in a previous video about how the Giants' offensive line has been horrible, and they really need the help there. Jon Runyan had made a name for himself, being the son of another Jon Runyan, obviously being Jon Runyan Jr., who's a coach and had a fairly successful NFL career, and I think he's going to fit in well over there. I think with them downgrading at running back, we'll see that in a couple pages here. $3 million or $30 million for 3 years, 10 a year. Again, kind of around that same price that we just talked about with Tyler Biadasz. But this is a big need for the Giants, and I think Runyan's a good player. And seeing other guards getting longer contracts for, we talked about Robert Hunt getting $100 million for 5 years. I think $30 million for 3 years for Runyan is huge. And again, big need to fill for the Giants, so I give him a B+, and I think it was a solid signing. Jeff Okudah, another B+. It's only 1 year, $4.75 million. I really like what the Texans have been doing, though. and I trust their defensive coordinator that's slipping my name, or his name is slipping my mind right now. The guy that was for the 49ers. You know who I'm talking about. I think he did a really good job with the Texans last year. And I think that adding a piece like Jeff Okudah, who was supposed to be good, has kind of been bouncing around teams. I think, the defensive-minded coach who I can't think of his name right now. What the hell is his name? He did such a great job last year with the defense. I think a young, talented guy who has bounced around and needs the opportunity, I think it is a great fit for the defense. I think it's a pretty cheap contract too, 4.75, just a flyer. B+ for me, though. I think they'll be able to do something good with that. Danico Autry only gets a C+. He's an interesting player because what I've seen from him is early on in his career, he did not play very well. He was not a very good defensive lineman in any regard, didn't really have any strong suits. Then once he hit like 29, 30 years old, he finally started getting the sacks and the TFLs and quarterback pressures and producing. And that was at like 29, 30 years old. Well, when the season starts, he's going to be 34 years old. So I think 2 years is pretty fair. I want to say he had nine and a half sacks last year, or maybe it was like 11 or 11 and a half. In the past 2 years, he was around 10 sacks, and he's been getting TFLs as well. So I think doing that on the defensive line, I think it's a huge piece added. And actually, just a few minutes ago, to give you the time of when this is being posted, they just signed another edge rusher in Danielle Hunter. So we'll talk about that in a couple videos from now. But another huge signing. I think Danico Autry across from Danielle Hunter is going to be nuts. And I think, $10 million a year, I think at 34 years old, it seems like it could be an overpay, but he really has produced since he turned 30, and he's honestly only been getting better. Not a normal thing, but I think that it's only 2 years. I think it makes it worth it, but it's still just a C+ for me, mainly because of the age. A lot of money for a guy that's 34 years old. Xavier McKinney gets a B-. I think this is a huge signing and a great fit for the Packers, and I think a big need, big hole filled with Xavier McKinney. You're going to have him for 4 years, which I think is huge. I think $17 million is a lot of money, though. This makes him the third highest paid safety in the league, and I don't personally think he's done enough to prove that. He did have a great year last year, but aside from that, it's just been pretty good. So I think third highest is just too much money. That's why I go B-. Again, I like the fit, and it's a huge need, but just as the money, in this case, I think it is too much, even factoring in that salary cap boost. I think third highest paid safety is not really what he's worth. I know the Bears were in on Xavier McKinney as well, and this kind of explains to me why they didn't go for him, because this is a lot of money. So good on the Packers for filling that hole, but I do think it is too much money, so we only get a B- for McKinney. Devin Singletary, here's the running back we were just talking about. The downgrade from Saquon Barkley to Devin Singletary. I think it's a fairly good deal, though. 3 years, $17.5 million, 5.83 a year is really, it's fair. I actually don't mind Devin Singletary, and I think that's a pretty good price for him, especially with how the market's been with guys like Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift getting $8 million a year. We also just saw Derrick Henry get $8 million, which we'll talk about in a future video. But I think with how the market is, I think 5.83 is fair, and I just think it's a pretty good deal. There were a lot of running backs available. I don't know if maybe the Giants just look at Devin Singletary as being the best option. But because of what else was available and it being a good price, I think this is, again, just kind of an average signing, but I think because it's a pretty good price and it fills a need, I give it a C+. I just think there is better options out there and maybe even better value. Grover Stewart, this is way too much money for me. $13 million. He's never really produced very much. Now, he's an interior guy where most of what he's going to be doing is run stuffing in the middle, and he can do that. $13 million is just more than he's worth. He is pretty much not even there as far as putting pressure on the quarterback and making any sort of plays in that. So you're paying $13 million a year for 3 years for a guy specifically to stay inside and block the run. And again, this is even factoring in, I mentioned in the past videos that I really do like when teams re-sign the players that they've had. I think that deserves a little boost. I just think this is a big overpay for the Colts. So I like them keeping him around, but I don't think his performance really, I don't think he's earned that $13 million a year contract. So good on him and good on his agent for getting that contract done. But as far as the Colts and the grade, I just give it a C-. Again, I don't think it was a great deal. First A+. Actually, I think yeah, this is the first A+. I'm huge on Gus Edwards. Big fan of Gus Edwards. I liked what he did last year, and for the price, I mean, $3.25 million a year is just criminal. I think he's better than Devin Singletary. I think you could make an argument that he's better than Pollard and Swift. You can call me crazy for that. The only statistic I really have to back it up is there's a stat that shows run success rate. So it's based on, what is this really tracking? But basically they track the player and they track plays that will keep a drive going by the running back. So when given the opportunity, he has the highest in the league. The entire NFL, it was like 57.5%. Next most was like 55%, and everybody else kind of hangs around 50, 40%. So that's really the only statistic that I could bring to show that off. But he runs hard. He breaks a lot of tackles. He's like a Derrick Henry light. He's called the Gus Bus for a reason, and I just think $3.25 million is way too low for him. So I think it's great value for the Chargers. They're going to kind of have to see what they're going to need in their offense. And I think for Jim Harbaugh, I think this fits the offense. If they are going to go a little bit more run-oriented, I think he definitely can be a bell cow back. We'll have to worry about the injuries, of course, but I think it's definitely a better fit than Eckler. And for the price, you really just can't beat Gus Edwards, so he gets an A+ for me. Geno Stone, A-, another high grade for the Bengals. Mainly, I base this one a lot off of what the other contracts were. You're basically getting, I don't think he led in safety interceptions, but he was up there. I believe he got 7 last year. And 2-year, $15 million is the exact same contract that, what's his name got? Louise. Kevin Byard to the Bears, who's 30 years old and kind of dropped off last season. So Geno Stone has his best season, and he's much younger. I think he's 25, maybe even 24. And he has his best season. Granted, it was with the Ravens, who you could point a lot of different directions for their success on defense. But Geno Stone has to be one of them Geno Stone has to be one of them because he did get those 7 interceptions and was a huge part of getting turnovers. So I think for the price, who you're getting, A-, it has to be an A-. I don't think you can go much lower as far as B+. You could say maybe it's a lot of money, but I really like Geno Stone, so I had to go A- for the Bengals. I think it's a great deal for them. And then the last one in today's video, we talked about a little bit in the last video about how big of a fan I am of Gardner Minshew. And I think it's great, get an opportunity to start with the Raiders. Now, they still could draft a quarterback, and then he's just a bridge quarterback. I think he deserves to start in the league, and I think it's very unfortunate that he hasn't really gotten a full opportunity in his career. He's kind of turning into a Ryan Fitzpatrick sort of deal. But wherever he's went, he's played pretty well. I don't think if there's been losses, I don't think you can point to a lot of times where it's strictly because Gardner Minshew isn't good enough. And I like on the Raiders, you have Devontae Adams and a few other pieces that can be good to have a quarterback that can get him the ball. I think Aiden O'Connell, I don't think he's necessarily it. I also think he could benefit from sitting behind Gardner Minshew because I'm high on him. I think $12.5 million a year, that's like low backup pay. So for that price for 2 years, you're likely going to have him as a bridge quarterback for this year and then potentially next year, depending on how you're feeling about the existing. But 2 years is also really nice because if it turns out this year they aren't ready to put the next guy in next year, they can stick with him for 2 years, or if they'll have a solid backup for whoever this rookie or younger quarterback is that comes in. So I give it a B+. I think it's huge for him. I hope he gets a chance to start. I just think for the price, a very good deal. And Gardner Minshew gets a B+. That's going to be all for this video. I'm going to be moving on to the next one. Again, I'm going to try to get 3 out. So like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.